Hey guys, it's RodimusPrimal. I am back in another video, and today this is part 2 of the interview that with FJ Desanto for the War for Cybertron Trilogy's Kingdom series. If you want to see part 1, you can see it over here, and we are going to continue on talking heavy spoilers for this series. I still may do a full-blown spoiler talk, but I've already done that on my live stream if you haven't already seen it, and I'll have the link in the description for that as well. So without further ado, let's sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's transform and roll out. Consider supporting the channel on Patreon, becoming a channel member, or purchase some merch on my Spring store today.
But then basically in the aligned continuity, Alpha Trion's dead by the time any of this happened.
Calling it aligned continuity, that's what they call the Prime and War for Cybertron games. That's a whole other continuity, but go ahead.
But the thing is, we sat there, it was early, like we hadn't even gotten the script yet, so it wasn't a big problem. Is, you know, like, hey, Megatron in Cyberverse blows up a building that Alpha Trion's in and he's on his deathbed. It's like, okay, in our continuity that still happens, but that's the starting point of the war.
Okay.
But when you first meet them in Siege and he goes, you know, Alpha Trion would be ashamed. That's all referring to that. Like there's a version in War for Cybertron where that happens.
Okay.
Right. So then we just said, oh, actually this gives us more rich material with Ultra Magnus. Right.
Right.
So these things sort of speak to it and inform the story. I had to sort of pick up on certain things that were designated, but we're talking about the Allspark. So the Allspark,
right? The Allspark of the Matrix. That's what we're talking about.
Didn't have a lot of rules to it. So to have that aligned continuity, like I have in my mind, this isn't canon or anything like that. The Allspark is the same in every continuity. So we actually use the Cyberverse model.
Okay.
Like we got Cyberverse to give us their digital model for the Allspark.
The D20.
Yeah, the D20.
Yeah.
For our show. And the idea was, I would think that somehow in the adventures of Galvatron and Nemesis in this continuity, they figured out, hey, the Matrix leadership's not enough to kill Unicron, right? Or Unicron, because of what he dealt with in G1 or whatever, figured out a way to, like, that's not going to kill me.
Okay.
Right? So basically what you have, Galvatron, especially in the Dead Universe episode, telling Megatron, get the Matrix of leadership, is to kill Prime, get rid of Prime.
Right.
You know, so you can get the Allspark. Like, they realize Prime's pretty uncorruptible, but Nemesis exists. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these weird things. We don't know that story. So in our sort of logic, Nemesis, Optimus becomes Nemesis because he failed in his mission with the Allspark. You know, that's that future where the Allspark never comes back. Something different happens. I don't know what that is.
It's an alternate future timeline.
Yeah, like, so basically by bringing the Allspark back, and even I think somebody says it at a certain point, if we get the Allspark back, you don't exist, you'll be okay. And they're like, you know, and Nemesis and Galvatron are so corrupt and so evil, they're like, screw you. You know, I don't care about you, I care about me now.
Yeah.
So I want the Allspark.
Well, not only that, they actually say that the timeline itself, like in other words, our future will still exist because we're a different timeline. We're a different universe because you guys introduced the multiverse concept, which is how the big Kingdom toy got turned into episode 5, which was a really cool reveal, by the way, the having Teletran 1, the arc transforming, which didn't go with my theory, but that's okay.
You know, that's why I poked at you on that. I said,
yeah, you did.
Well, the thing is, what happened was, this is actually a really cool story, is in that like 2018 initial development meeting, they pulled out a drawing of an ArcBot. It's not what you end up seeing, right? And they said, we're going to do an ArcBot. And we were like, oh, wow, that's really cool. It's going to be for the third thing. And we didn't know what we were going to, you know, how we were going to incorporate, how it was going to do that, all that. And the arc that you see in the show was our design.
Okay.
Meaning, let me be clear, like Nemesis and like, I've always talked about how they give us the CAD data for model building and all that stuff. And there are some things like Alita, the Beast Wars characters, where they didn't have CAD data or they weren't ready yet. So the Arc and Nemesis, because they were early on, we built those art, you know, the team built them themselves in Japan. Now everything we build on is based on model sheets from the 80s that they give us.
Okay.
Right. So the arc is not something we just go off and do and goodbye Hasbro. It's Hasbro goes, here's the model sheets from the 80s, which are really cool.
Yeah.
And we sit there and go, let's build something from that. And Hasbro signs off on everything. You know, like I can't design something without them approving, with the exception of Exhaust's wrong head, which is
another story for another day. We can actually talk about that one.
Yeah, I'm sure I can tell that story at some point. I told you that story, right?
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
yes,
I can tell that publicly at a certain point. But anyway, what happens is, as we were developing the arc, then we had our arc for Siege. Hasbro, every time we build a model, we give Hasbro the 3D, the turnarounds, like 3D turnaround models, and the 2D drawings.
Mm-hmm.
So they have them for reference to build up. That's how they do the Walmart line. And so what happened was they decided to build the ArcBot, or the Genesis, the ArcBot toy, based on what we had built already for the arc, for the consistency of it.
Cool.
So now we had reached a point where we were building things based on what they had. Now they're building things based on what we had because we passed them, you know, from a production point of view. So the cool thing is they built that arc based on what we had, and then they would give us the designs because, you know, we can cheat transformations.
Right.
Meaning it doesn't have to, like, they have to sit there and build the toy. How does this transform? Like physically, physics. And Takara does a lot of that stuff. So then they showed us, here's the model we built for the ArcBot. And, you know, the practical. So the bot you see is the toy. Okay. But we got to have input on the creative on it. Like, oh, the panels here and all, really cool, very cool collaboration. The coolest part, which you'll appreciate, is, I don't know, it was like a year ago, I get a call from Hasbro, like, can you hop on a Zoom? And you never question, like, it's always something cool. Like when they, like, at this point, they're not yelling at me about anything, right? So I get on, and it's Ben Montano and an artist, and they're like, we want to show you the box art for the ArcBot. And I was like, oh, wow. You know, like, okay. And it's pretty much what you see.
Right.
Except in the foreground is Prime's hand with the Allspark. And I was like, no. Like, so when you look at the box art and you see the glowing light from off panel, that's actually the Allspark. But then they did cool things like, if you look on the top of the box, you don't have it yet, I would assume. But
not yet.
You'll see the Nemesis.
Kato's got it.
Air Razor and Black Arachnia, like little bits. They went through the scripts and added these things in the box. And that was like, to me, the ultimate version of the collaboration is the ArcBot. And so we came up with the idea of the Allspark would be the thing that pushes Teletran to become, like, it's the ultimate power source.
Okay.
And that's what it is.
So it's like in and of itself is what turned... It's what turned the arc into a transformer. Like it wasn't supposed to open. Okay. Yeah. So and it was it was cool. And it was cool seeing it on screen. Let me tell you, when he decks the Nemesis, it was like, and he catches Megatron in his hand, it was cool. But I was like, I wish that my theory went with Skylynx, because I liked Skylynx. I liked his character, so it was kind of like, it would have been so cool if you like incorporated it that way. But it's fine that it didn't turn out that way. I'm just saying, like, it was like my theory that we'd be like, yeah, that was something that I said that they ended up doing, like, would have been cool.
No, even from the beginning, we knew early on it would be Teletran, with Teletran's voice.
Okay.
And, you know, originally, I'm giving this up, is when they crashed back on Cybertron, we were going to kill him.
Okay.
Like, the arc would be broken, and, like, we wrote it where it was, like, a massive sacrifice, and we were like, I can't kill this thing because we had seen what it looked like.
Right.
It was like, if there are further adventures, like, we didn't want to kill this guy off, Teletran. Mm-hmm. Well, we already put him through hell in the second season with the Dead Universe corrupting his brain and all that. The whole first season trying to fuel him back up.
Right.
You know, like, it was too good an idea. The toy is too cool to kill him. I love that character beyond belief.
It was really cool to see on screen. When it happened, I was like, oh, here we go. And then he act like, it's one of those things. It's the same moment with Omega Supreme when he came up in Siege, you know. Yeah. And that's also something why one of the things I didn't like in Earthrise. I was like, when the Omega hologram comes in and faces Scorpion. I was like, no, it could have been real. It could have been so cool to see more of that. But
yeah, it's.
I know. I'm just, two titans fighting each other. The other cool thing about the Ark transforming was it looked like the last Autobot, and that was something that I thought that it was supposed to be. Was the last Autobot from the final issues of the Marvel comic. Was that something that was in production with the...
I thought it was that.
Okay.
I thought it was that too when I saw the final Ark design. And I thought, hey, that looks like the last Autobot. And it was funny because I had just done a big reread of like all the Marvel stuff. And they were like, no, it's not that. Because there was an idea of alluding to him being the last Autobot.
Okay.
In maybe like in a post-credit thing, et cetera, and they were like, nope. And so I was like, okay, I can't do anything with that.
So it was like something that you wanted to do and just couldn't, at the end of the day, just couldn't do.
Because I had the face is the same as the last Autobot. I don't know where they're sort of kidding themselves thinking it's not that.
I know.
But again, it's one of those things where it's like another layer I can't add. It's Teletran and that's it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of the limitations that you had in the show, and a lot of the criticism that you probably gotten with voice acting too. I liked a lot of the voices. I know some people had issues with some, and with Kingdom, obviously, some are going to have issues with others. And at the same time, there are some voice actors in there again, like Lindsay was great, Frank was great, Jason Marnocha was great. A lot of them are good, but I'm sure how would you respond? Professionally, of course, to the criticism, to understand, like, because you've explained it to me is that it's a multiverse thing, but how would you explain it to,
Well, that's it. I mean, the thing is, it was always a fresh start with the show, so it was always the intention of the problem becomes if you add one original actor, you got to add all of them, right? And that becomes, I don't want to say messy, but it becomes complicated. And knowing this was leading to sort of exposing a multiverse, that was another reason for sort of a fresh start with everybody. Now, I'm not going to argue or talk down to anybody who doesn't like a voice or doesn't like the voice direction. I can't argue somebody's taste in something. I personally am proud of every actor in the show. I enjoy it tremendously. We tried to respect the best we could everything and everyone that came before. Some of these actors, especially the older actors, are so good, you can't duplicate it. You can't replicate it. And again, we know it. I mean, I told you years ago, hey, people are not going to like certain takes on the characters. Now, a lot of people, they've grown up with this. They have their own vision, opinion of what it should be. It's not my place to argue with that or tell them they're wrong. Nobody's wrong. That's sort of my answer to it. People can argue it, and I'm proud of the show. So I had a lot of issues with Prime Wars. If I could disassociate myself with the majority of Prime Wars, I would, because that was somebody else's creative vision for that. That was somebody else's idea for it. With this, I was in a fortunate and privileged position to lead this show. So I have to take the good with the bad. Yeah. Meaning, if somebody has one opinion of something they don't like, there's somebody else who likes it. And all I can say is how we did it, why we did it, and that it was always done in every aspect of it with a love and respect to the franchise. Maybe 10 years from now, people will look at it differently and like it. The one thing is, I'd rather, if this is the big problem is the voices, I'll take it. I'll take the hit. You can blame me for it and me alone for making the final decisions on these things.
Yeah.
You and I can argue over the portrayal of Optimus. I tried to, with the team, create a journey for it. And I think it works. You may not. You don't like Earthrise, but, I'll always respect a differing opinion for somebody who has sat and watched it respectfully. And in this day and age, especially the internet and things that happen, you can't please everybody and you're overwhelmed by it. And look, I'm the guy who sits there and I'll sit here, it's coming out in 2 days. I'll be glued to the phone nonstop going, oh, this person hated this person, like this person, going to Rotten Tomatoes,
hoping
watching all these videos.
Yeah. I'm hoping that, because this is obviously going to come out after this is now after Kingdom has already come out, but I enjoyed the heck out of Kingdom, like as a whole. Like the story itself, and when the Beast Wars characters are introduced to, like, it took a little bit to get started, but then like when it got to its conclusion, we were ramped up and we were ready. Like I couldn't believe that, like it was like episode 5 concludes and you're like, wait, this is only episode 5. There's one more episode left, and we still got more. That's how I felt by the end of it, especially the homages, like the Dinobot homage and stuff. So like, I enjoyed the heck out of it, but I know that some people are going to dislike it, and I know that and also because from a standpoint of you've been working on this thing, you know the ins and the outs of it, but you also understand that a lot of fans have their varying opinions, and I think that's I will give you a lot of credit for your professionalism in how you've handled the fans and their likes and their dislikes with the series.
Look, it hurts. You want everybody to sit there and be like, this is the greatest thing ever, and it's the greatest Transformer show ever, and you're perfect and wonderful, and blah, blah. It's just never going to be that way. The one thing I take from this is, like I said earlier, is the privilege of working on it. The one thing, and I can't say this about Prime Wars, but I can say this with this, is the intention of everybody involved from top to bottom was always a good intention.
Yep.
Was always an intention to honor what we were given by Hasbro, which is the privilege to work on it and to steer it in a way that we thought respected it. And I know, I can guarantee you, these writers were our diehard fans who we were all trying to create a show that fans would want. Right. And I think in a lot of ways it succeeded. But the dilemma becomes also, you're nearing, a couple of years, it's 40 years of Transformers, right? This year is 25 years of Beast Wars. You run into the problem with the thing with Beast Wars is you haven't seen it in 25 years. And I say this as a fan of Star Wars, Star Trek. It's like, I'm a huge Trekkie. I can't watch any of the new stuff. I don't like it. But I don't, go on the internet and attack the creators for it, some of which I know. You know what I mean? So it's a very different thing, because you sit there and know that people have good intentions, and sometimes it doesn't work. I did a movie called The Spirit with Frank Miller wrote and directed. Frank Miller's my idol, right? The movie didn't come out great. It tanked. It's the first thing I ever worked on. It's heartbreaking, right? Because you're sitting there like enthusiastic, working with movie stars like Sam Jackson, Scarlett Johansson, all this stuff, right? And it doesn't work, and people hate it. And you sit there and you can understand, like, yeah, it didn't work because we tried these things, and things work and don't work. With this, there's a blessing and curse of being the person running it.
Yeah.
This is the one I'll go down, with the ship if it goes down, but the ship's not going down. Like, in the end, I'm proud of the show, and I think the show's good. And you have a responsibility of dealing with these franchises I made this comparison. I started in the business working for the guys who produced the Batman movies. And when I worked for them, it was the Nolan stuff, which was universally well received. But I was also there the 8 years before Nolan, where the Schumacher version of it drove it into the ground. Right?
Yeah.
And I was there 8 years of multiple scripts and Warner Brothers spending millions of dollars on talented people trying to figure out what's the right way to do this, or what's the way that's going to connect with the audience. And in the end, what happens is, when these franchises are so deeply embedded into our culture, these are things in our culture, right? They're not just fly-by-night things. They're real cultural events or cultural things. Transformers, Batman, Marvel now in particular. And the fandom is a diverse range of people who have everybody got a different entry point. So for some people, it's G1. For some people, it's Beast Wars. Some people, it's Prime. Some people, it's Robots. And now, because you and I are old men, for some people, it's Cyberverse. And for some people, it's this. I'll give you an example. We're the Star Wars generation. And we remember a world when it was just 3 movies, right? Now there's 1 million movies. But, you remember when the prequels came out, the fans shot all over it. They hated it. And the diehards, blah, blah. But my nephew, who's 22, his first movie going experience was Attack of the Clones. He was too young for Phantom Menace, but he grew up in a world where it was 6 movies.
Okay.
And so he doesn't look at it differently as 6 movies. You know, like, then he sees the sequels. He's like, what the hell is that? Right? Like, I don't understand that. But there's a generation of kids growing up with it now that in 5, 10, 20 years, their Star Wars is Rey and Kylo Ren. Just as for my nephew, it's Padme and, you know, Darth Maul and all these things. So I can't do, when you make these shows, you have to think that way in terms of how are you making it an all-encompassing thing? You know, and I told you this with Siege from the beginning. Siege was designed to be an entry point, but also to be something where the old men like us could latch onto it and understand it right away and get into it.
Right.
Like it or hate it, doesn't matter. But that was our mandate, was it's a love letter to the fans, or at least intended to be, of multiple generations of this stuff. And then you sneak the Easter eggs in, you sneak all the stuff in, but you have the curveball of Beast Wars. So guess what? It can't be G1. It can't be Beast Wars, because by the nature of the mandate of the toy line,
you already changed the timeline. You made a multiverse.
The timeline, so
which, when Kingdom ends, it's the same thing. When the way Kingdom ends, it feels like it's now a new universe, like a new world that they can.
But Unicron says, "I will begin again. I shall begin again." Whatever he says in the very last shot.
I'll be king.
So that might be more this. That might be something else. That might be, you know, a kid show. It might be. That's, again, my journey is at this point. You know what I mean? Like.
Right.
And I've done my job, and I've delivered what that is, thanks to hundreds, if not thousands, of talented people, from the writers to the designers to the directors to the animation studio to Netflix to everybody.
I think a lot of people appreciate that, like that they appreciate that the series came out and you put a lot of love into it, and you can tell the love, even if there were things that people really liked and there being things that people felt that didn't deliver, but you delivered something that a lot of people have latched onto. Good, bad, and different, you know? And that's,
and I'd love to think, you know, one of the things we found out in sort of the data, which sounds really awful.
Yeah.
From Siege in particular, was it was G1 fans who now have kids watching it with their kids.
Yeah.
Which is a big surprise, because we meant it to be mature and adult. You know what I mean? Like, not for kids. And the big thing was they were then buying the toys for the kids. It was great. So, like, I'd love to think there's some kid who 20 years from now goes, you know, hey, War for Cybertron was my favorite.
But I think that's something that I think that not just yourself, that like a lot of people, whenever they're revisiting these franchises, they have to realize that it is for the older fan and for the newer fan together. And they, you know, because these franchises, like you said, Transformers is nearly 40 years old. Other franchises are over 40 years old, and it's now the parents who grew up with this are seeing it come back, and they want to sit down on the couch with their kids and be able to have the experience with both. And I think that's something that, you know, like you said, that you didn't realize that War for Cybertron actually did is introduce it into a new way for kids and for big, you know, kids like myself. My wife jokes at me because she says that I'm her third kid. So, you know, because I got 2 kids. We have 2 kids, so it's like she jokes in that respect, because I got all the toys behind me, and you know, I'll bring them, a lot of them, downstairs to play with the kids, and you know, I like the fact that with the War for Cybertron toys, I can take them downstairs, and my 2-year-old can run around and not destroy it because it's got ball joints, instead of my G1s, which will break if I let my 2-year-old handle it. So,
I mean, that's the world we live in. You know, like, you know, Hasbro, to their credit, with the toy line, really figured out their audience for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the toy line's been super successful. And they figured out the audience for it, where I think Prime Wars might have been a little different.
Yeah.
You know, and having on this experience in particular, really getting to know the people that make the toys, which is fascinating to me. They can't kick me out of there fast enough, because I always have a million questions. But then even meeting the Takara Tomy guys, and sort of seeing how they collaborate, etc. Like, you know, I'm really proud of behind the scenes what we sort of built in terms of a direct conduit pipeline between brand and entertainment, in a way where it's not a commercial for toys and it can stand on its own. But, you know, my dream of this was always, if you liked a character in this, you could go buy the toys and really have a good feeling about your experience. So that was the intention. Whether or not we succeeded, TBD. But I think we've done a good job with it.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think as overall as a trilogy, I think it works as a complete story. Like you said, 18 episodes, you told a complete story. We should have screamed a little louder at Netflix and told them they should have made 30, because then it would have been.
The problem is that was decided so far back, like people didn't even know the show existed yet. You know? It's one of those things. If people do yell at Netflix that you want more of it, and
there we go. Netflix, we want more Transformers. We want more Transformers. Period.
Beyond me, beyond whatever, there's always going to be Transformers. It's such a wonderful part of our global culture that I didn't realize it till I was really involved with the franchise, where how often I'll see an Autobot or Decepticon sticker on a car or a thing and all this stuff. It's like, I knew it was such an important part of culture, but until you're working on it and you understand the responsibility of working on it, it's a whole different ballgame. And the irony is, when I was initially hired on Prime Wars, and I was just a G1 guy. I was a G1 guy. When I say G1, I mean also into Victory, Headmaster, all the original. But I wasn't an expert. Like, I was like a fan. I knew it, but I wasn't like obviously your level of fan, etc. And I was sort of brought in to be the guy to balance the extreme fanboys out. And what I learned in that Prime Wars experience was not just my fandom, but Hasbro and how they approached it and their respect for the fans. Even though people probably disagree that they don't think that, or they're doing this and this, that they really care about it. And I found myself, when we got to this, very protective of it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, very in awe of what Transformers is as a cultural thing. And that's what I think, because everybody has their vision of what Transformers is in their head. And they judge it, new things based on that, and like it or hate it, etc. For me, it was always G1. But when we got into this and I could learn more about Beast Wars and all that stuff, my appreciation of everything as a whole just increased dramatically. Meaning, I knew G1 and I watched everything else, but it made me appreciate people's fandoms for all the different elements of it, which is how I approached Batman. My entry point Batman was the 1966 Batman. I wasn't born then, but the reruns as a kid.
Right.
But then I was able to age properly into like Frank Miller, Dark Knight Returns, which came out at the right time. And then Michael Keaton, and you realize there's so many different versions, and it's like, if it's good, it's good. You know what I mean? Like, I like Cyberverse a lot, but it's a kid's show. You know what I mean? Like, I like the Japanese stuff, even though, especially like Beast Wars Neo and all that, just because I don't even know half that's going on in it. It's so cool. And, like, I got, it's over there in the other part of the room, but the Japanese Generations book.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, do you know those books?
I know that there's a bunch of them. I don't.
Like these Generations books, right? They come out every year in Japan, right? And it's literally sort of like an annual of all the toys that have come out that year.
Wow.
And then it's a totally different ballgame where it's like, yeah, we did this, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is what we did. And it has stuff from the show in it. And, like the Walmart line, and you're sitting there going, we added, this, here, this is the, like, here's Scrap Face. You know what I mean?
Just needed to bring my man RodimusPrimal.
Responsibility and privilege. Look, see, like, that's our show, dude.
Yeah.
Like, we did this. And it's like, I just hope people understand that, like, you look at it and understand the responsibility of it. And not everybody does that. Like, I've worked with people on this franchise, especially in Prime Wars, where it was about them and not the franchise, and it's like, no matter what happens to me in my life, I had this wonderful opportunity to do this and get to meet people like you and meet other fans and all that stuff and be part of something that will never go away. And the irony is, my college roommate is a guy named Aaron Kruger who wrote the movie, and he had nothing to do with this clearly, but, like, we'll sit there and be like, isn't that weird if we had been in the dorm room at NYU, like 20 years from now, we're going to be part of Transformers. It's like, what? What I mean? Like, it's crazy. Sorry.
It's crazy in small world, but it allows us to be able to do so much. And you know. But I want to thank you again for coming on. I mean, we can talk for hours with Transformers stuff. I mean, clearly, I mean, it's like I could bring out books, I could bring out figures, you'll bring out your books. We're gonna actually have to meet in person at some point someday. So
on the East Coast for sure.
You know, yeah, definitely. But I want to thank you guys. If you guys want to leave your comments in the comment section below, be sure to thumbs up this video. Check out Kingdom on Netflix now. If you haven't already. Of course, we talked all the spoilers like crazy on this, so it's you probably have already watched it. And as always, guys, until next time, till all are one.